The night had been quiet at our Domino's store on Rusty Road. Too quiet. My name is Samuel Wright, and I was working the late shift like I always did. The fluorescent lights hummed above me while I wiped down the counter for what felt like the 100th time. The clock on the wall showed 3:12 a.m., and I was starting to think about closing up early since we hadn't had an order in hours. That's when our order system made that familiar ping sound. I walked over to check it out, expecting another regular late-night pizza order. But what I saw made me stop in my tracks. The order kept changing right in front of my eyes. First, it showed pepperoni, then mushrooms, then olives. But they weren't random changes. As I watched, the toppings started forming letters on the screen. HELPME. I rubbed my eyes, thinking I must be tired. But the message was still there, clear as day. Then it changed again. I know you're watching. My hands started shaking. I wanted to call my manager, Mark, but he had left an hour ago. The only sounds in the store were the quiet hum of the refrigerators and my own breathing. I tried to convince myself it was just a glitch in the system, but deep down, I knew something wasn't right. The phone rang, making me jump. Nobody ever calls this late unless it's a prank. I hesitated before picking it up. Domino's Pizza, how can I help you? The voice on the other end wasn't human. It sounded like someone had taken different recordings and mixed them together. Samuel, it said, knowing my name without me telling it. Your sacrifice is required to complete this order. I dropped the phone like it was on fire. But even from the counter, I could hear that voice continuing to speak, getting louder and louder. The order system kept pinging, each sound making my heart jump. New messages appeared faster now. Come to the screen. Look closer. Don't turn away. I couldn't stop watching as the letters formed and reformed, like some kind of horrible dance. I pulled out my phone to call Mark, but there was no signal. The store's landline was still off the hook, that terrible voice still speaking. I forced myself to listen. The ingredients must be perfect, Samuel. Just like they were that night. Remember that night, Samuel? The accident? My blood turned cold. Nobody knew about the accident. It happened 2 years ago during another late shift. A delivery went wrong and I never told anyone the full story. How could this thing know? The security cameras in the corners of the store started moving, all turning to face me at once. On the screens behind the counter, every open window started showing the same thing. Images from that night. The rain, the dark road, the headlights. Stop it, I whispered, but the images kept coming. The order system pinged again. Time to pay for your mistakes. The lights in the store started flickering, and the ovens turned on by themselves, their temperature displays climbing higher and higher. The voice from the phone grew clearer. You can't hide from what you did, Samuel. The debt must be paid. I backed away from the counter, but everywhere I looked, screens were lighting up with more images. Even my phone started showing them, though it had no signal. The night I'd tried so hard to forget was playing out everywhere around me. As the images kept flashing around me, memories I'd buried deep started surfacing. That rainy night, I was making a delivery to an address that didn't exist. I'd gotten lost on a back road, and then there was someone walking. I swerved to avoid them, but my car spun out. When I got out to check, there was nobody there. No body, no evidence. I convinced myself I'd imagined it all. The voice from the phone changed, becoming clearer, more familiar. You left me there, Samuel. In the rain. In the dark. The temperature in the store dropped so fast I could see my breath. The security footage on the screens changed, showing me something I'd never seen before. What happened after I drove away that night. A figure lying in the ditch, trying to call for help, slowly fading away. No, I said, backing up until I hit the wall. This isn't real. This can't be real. Reality is what we make it, Samuel, the voice said, now coming from everywhere at once. The order screen changed again. Your turn to disappear. The ovens were getting hotter, steam pouring out of them. Every screen in the store showed the same message now. Confess. The security cameras followed my every move, their red lights blinking like angry eyes. I had to make a choice. Keep denying what happened, or face the truth I'd been running from. The voice waited, patient and terrible, while the images of that night played on endless loop around me. The store's phone system started ringing, not just one line, but all of them at once. Each time I looked at a different screen, I saw a new detail from that night that I'd forced myself to forget. The color of the jacket they were wearing, the sound of impact that I'd pretended not to hear, the way I'd checked my mirrors as I drove away, telling myself there was nothing to see. I remember now, I said, my voice shaking. I remember everything. The voice responded, softer now but still unnatural. Tell me what you remember, Samuel. Tell me what you did. Words started pouring out of me, the truth I'd kept locked away for 2 years. I was tired. It was raining so hard I could barely see. The address didn't make sense, but I kept driving anyway. When I saw someone on the road, I tried to stop, but the screens flickered with each word, showing me more. The person had been trying to wave me down. Their car had broken down further up the road. They just needed help, and I'd left them to die. I convinced myself they must have gotten up and walked away. I continued, tears running down my face. I checked the news for days, but there was nothing. No reports, no missing persons. I thought that meant... That meant what, Samuel? The voice was closer now, almost human. I thought that meant it wasn't real, that I'd imagined it all. But I didn't imagine it, did I? They really died out there, alone in the rain, because of me. The ovens started cooling down, but the cold in the store got worse. Frost appeared on the windows, spreading in patterns that looked like reaching hands. The voice spoke again, but now it was coming from behind me. Turn around, Samuel. I didn't want to, but my body moved anyway. Standing there, dripping wet despite being inside, was a figure I recognized from my nightmares. They looked just like they had that night, but their eyes were wrong. You had so many chances to make it right, they said, their voice matching the one from the phone. You could have called for help. You could have reported it. You could have given my family closure. Instead, you chose silence. I couldn't look away from those eyes. What do you want from me? The truth, they said, taking a step forward. Water pooled around their feet, but it was dark, too dark to be just rain. The truth, spoken to the world. No more hiding, no more pretending. The order screen changed one last time. Press record. All the cameras in the store focused on me, their red lights steady now. My phone turned on by itself, opening to the video recorder. The figure gestured at it. Tell them everything, Samuel. Let my family know what happened. Let them know why I never came home. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped the phone, but I pressed record. Looking into the camera, I started talking, telling the whole story from the beginning. As I spoke into my phone's camera, the figure watched silently. I told everything. The fake delivery address that had led me down that dark road, the moment of impact, my choice to drive away. I described every detail I could remember, including the location. I can't take back what I did, I said finally, looking directly into the camera. But I can tell the truth now. On April 15th, 2022, I was driving on Old Creek Road when I hit someone. I left them there, and they died because of my actions. Their name... I looked at the figure questioningly. Sarah Martinez, they said softly. I was 26 years old. Sarah Martinez, I repeated into the camera. I killed Sarah Martinez, and I've hidden that truth for 2 years. To her family, I'm so sorry. I'll turn myself into the police in the morning. You deserve justice." When I finished recording, the figure, Sarah, stepped closer. The cold was almost unbearable now, but I didn't move away. "The truth sets us both free," she said. "But there's still a price to be paid." All the screens in the store went black at once. When they came back on, they showed a single message: "The order must be completed." "What does that mean?" I asked, but I think I already knew. Sarah smiled, and it was the saddest thing I'd ever seen. "It means your life changes tonight, Samuel. The question is, are you ready to pay the price for redemption?" The order system made one final sound, and the screen showed a delivery address, the exact spot on Old Creek Road where everything had happened. Sarah stood by the door, waiting. "You have a choice," she said. "You can stay here, delete the video, and keep living with your guilt. Or you can make the delivery, face what happened, and help my family find peace." I looked at my phone, the video still ready to send. Then I grabbed my car keys. "I'll drive." The roads were empty as we drove, Sarah sitting silently in the passenger seat. When we reached the spot, I could see signs I'd missed before. Broken glass hidden in the grass, marks on the guardrail that had never been fixed. "Park here," Sarah said. I did. We got out, and she walked to the exact spot where it happened. "My parents drive this road sometimes, still looking for answers. My sister puts flowers here on my birthday. They never stop searching." The sky was starting to lighten. Sarah turned to me one last time. "Send the video, Samuel. Then call the police. Tell them where to find me." I pressed send on my phone, watching as the video uploaded. When I looked up again, Sarah was gone, but I knew what I had to do next. I dialed 911 with shaking fingers. "I need to report an accident," I said when they answered, "and a confession." The sun rose as I sat in my car, waiting for the police. They found exactly what Sarah said they would. Evidence that had been hidden but never gone away. The investigation revealed everything, matching my confession perfectly. I was arrested, of course. The video went to Sarah's family, and though they were heartbroken all over again, they finally had answers. Her sister came to one of my court dates and told me that just knowing the truth helped them start healing. The judge took my voluntary confession into account, but actions have consequences. I served time, and when I got out, I had to start my life over. But that was fair. Sarah never got to finish hers. The Domino's on Rusty Road is still there. Sometimes new employees talk about strange things that happen during late shifts. Orders that change by themselves, phones that ring with no one there. But the really strange thing is that every April 15th, at exactly 3:15 a.m., an order appears in the system. The address is always wrong, the toppings spell out different messages, and the phone rings with a voice asking for a delivery. But now everyone knows. You don't take that order. That delivery was already made, the debt was finally paid, and Sarah Martinez's story was finally told. They say the truth sets you free, but freedom comes at a price. I paid mine. And somewhere in the night, on a dark road in Mobile, a restless spirit found peace at last. I never thought my regular night shift at Domino's would turn into something that would haunt me forever. My name is Carlos Rivera, and I work as a night shift manager at a Domino's Pizza located on a quiet stretch of Route 66 in Oklahoma. The store sits at a remote service station, surrounded by nothing but endless fields and darkness. That night, I was driving my old Honda Civic through the empty highway. The moon was hiding behind thick clouds, making the road ahead look like a black river. As I pulled into the service station, I noticed how the flickering neon sign of our store was the only bright thing for miles around. I unlocked the front door at exactly 12:45 a.m., half an hour before my shift started. The familiar smell of pizza dough and tomato sauce filled my nose as I walked in. Everything seemed normal. The ovens were warm, the ingredients were stocked, and the floors were clean from the day shift. After changing into my uniform and washing my hands, I started my usual routine, checking the inventory, preheating the ovens, and making sure all the equipment was working properly. The clock on the wall showed 1:15 a.m. when I first noticed something wasn't right. The normally warm kitchen felt unusually cold, like someone had left a freezer door open. I remember thinking it was just the air conditioning acting up again. But then I saw something that made my heart skip a beat. A dark shape moved across the wall near the dough station. It wasn't my shadow. I wasn't even moving. I turned around quickly, but there was nothing there. Just the quiet hum of the refrigerators and the soft glow of the overhead lights. The shadows I saw were just the beginning. As I tried to focus on preparing the dough for the night's orders, more weird things started happening. The pizza oven, which I had just turned on, suddenly shut off by itself. When I went to check it, it turned back on, the temperature display showing numbers that kept changing randomly. I pulled out my phone to call my manager, but there was no signal. That's when I heard it, the soft sound of footsteps coming from the dining area. But that was impossible because I had locked all the doors when I came in. "Hello?" I called out, my voice shaking a little. "Is someone there?" The footsteps stopped. The silence that followed was so deep I could hear my own heartbeat. I walked slowly toward the front counter, holding a rolling pin in my hands. The dining area was dark except for the exit sign's red glow, but I could see all the tables were empty. As I turned to go back to the kitchen, the phone at the counter started ringing. This was strange because our phones usually don't ring until we open at 2 a.m. I picked it up with shaking hands. "Domino's Pizza, how can I help you?" I said, trying to sound normal. There was no voice on the other end. Instead, I heard what sounded like static and strange whispers. The whispers grew louder, but I couldn't understand what they were saying. It sounded like many voices talking at once, getting louder and louder until my ears hurt. Just as I slammed the phone down, our order system beeped. Someone had placed an online order. This was impossible. We weren't open yet, and our online system shouldn't have been active. But there it was, printing out, one large pizza, no toppings, to be delivered to Highway 66, mile marker 66. My hands were shaking as I read the order again. The customer notes section had strange symbols I had never seen before. The delivery address made no sense. We never delivered to highway markers, and mile marker 66 was in the middle of nowhere. I tried to cancel the order, but the system wouldn't respond. The printer started making weird noises and spitting out more receipts, all with the same order but with different strange symbols. The paper kept coming until it covered the floor around my feet. The dough mixer suddenly turned on by itself, spinning faster than it should. When I ran to unplug it, the metal bowl felt ice cold. Inside, the dough was black, like someone had mixed ash into it. The smell coming from it made me feel sick. It wasn't the normal yeasty smell of pizza dough, but something rotten and old. I backed away from the mixer, bumping into the prep table. That's when all the lights in the store started flickering, like someone was playing with the switches. But I was alone in the store. Or at least, I thought I was. The flickering lights cast dancing shadows on the walls, but these weren't normal shadows. They looked like people walking back and forth, tall figures that moved in ways that didn't make sense. Sometimes they would stop and seem to turn toward me, even though there was nobody there to cast these shadows. "This isn't real," I said out loud, trying to calm myself. My voice sounded small in the empty store. That's when I heard knocking at the front door. 3 slow knocks that echoed through the store. I froze, staring at the door. Through the glass, I could see a figure standing there, but it was too dark to make out any details. The knocking came again, louder this time. Store policy said we shouldn't open the door until opening time, but something made me walk toward it. As I got closer, I realized the figure was very tall, much taller than any normal person should be. I stopped a few feet from the door. The figure raised its hand and knocked again, but this time I noticed something strange. The sound came from behind me, not from the door. I spun around and found myself face to face with empty space, but the knocking continued, now coming from all around me. The ovens started turning on and off by themselves, their lights creating more shadows that joined the others on the walls. The temperature in the store dropped so low I could see my breath in the air. The order screen lit up again, but this time it displayed a message instead of an order. "We've been waiting for you, Carlos," it read. My name blinked on the screen in bright red letters. I had never told anyone my name. I wasn't wearing my name tag yet. The message changed. "Look in the walk-in freezer." My legs felt like lead as I walked toward the freezer door. The shadows on the walls followed me, their movements becoming more frantic. The door handle was covered in frost, even though I had checked it just an hour ago and it had been normal. When I pulled the door open, cold air rushed out like a winter wind. The light inside was flickering, but what I saw made me step back in horror. Written on the wall in frost were hundreds of names, and dates next to them. Some of the dates went back 50 years, but they were all for the same day, February 3rd. I checked my phone. It was February 3rd. Below all the names, written larger than the rest, was a new name being formed by frost right before my eyes. Carlos Rivera, 2025. The door slammed shut behind me, and I heard the lock click. The temperature started dropping fast, and the light began to fade. In the dimness, I could see shapes moving between the shelves, coming closer. As the shapes got closer, I could finally see what they were. People, but not quite right. They looked like they were made of shadows and frost, their edges blurring like smoke. They were all wearing Domino's uniforms from different eras, some old and faded, others newer. One of them stepped forward. Through the darkness, I could make out a name tag. Mike, store manager, 1975. His voice sounded like ice cracking. "Every 50 years," he said, "this store claims new souls to join its crew. We've all worked here, Carlos. We all took the night shift on February 3rd. The others moved closer, their cold presence making it harder to breathe. "The store was built on cursed ground," another voice said. "Native American burial ground, they say. But nobody believed the warnings. Nobody ever does." I pressed myself against the wall, feeling the names carved in frost against my back. "Why me?" I managed to ask through chattering teeth. "The store chooses," Mike said. "It needs living energy to stay open, to keep serving. We're all part of it now, forever making pizzas for customers who never come, delivering orders to addresses that don't exist." My mind was racing, trying to find a way out. The freezer door was locked, but there had to be another way. I remembered the emergency release handle. Every walk-in freezer had one by law. I just had to find it in the darkness. The shadow people watched as I felt along the walls. They didn't try to stop me, which somehow made it worse. They knew something I didn't. When I finally found the handle and pulled it, nothing happened. "It won't work," Mike said. "Nothing works when the store doesn't want it to. We all tried to escape. Some tried breaking windows, others called for help. But at 2 a.m., when the store officially opens, it's over." I looked at my phone. 1:55 a.m. 5 minutes until opening time. The shadow people started moving in a circle around me, their movements becoming faster and faster. The temperature kept dropping, and I could feel frost forming on my skin. But then I remembered something. Something my grandmother used to say about evil spirits and sacred ground. She had given me a small cross made of wood from an old church, which I always carried in my wallet. With shaking hands, I pulled it out. The moment I held up the cross, the shadow people backed away. The temperature in the freezer started to rise, and I could hear them whispering in panic. The cross began to glow with a warm light, pushing back the darkness. "No," Mike's voice crackled. "This has never happened before. The store, it's losing its hold." The freezer door burst open, and warm air rushed in. I ran out, still holding the glowing cross in front of me. The shadows on the walls were writhing now, trying to grab me, but they couldn't come near the light. I made it to the front door just as the clock struck 2 a.m. Behind me, I could hear screaming. Not human screaming, but the sound of something ancient and evil being torn apart. The whole building shook, and the lights exploded in showers of sparks. As I ran to my car, I looked back one last time. Through the windows, I could see the shadow people fading away, their forms dissolving like smoke. Mike was the last to disappear, and just before he vanished, he smiled. A real, human smile of relief. The next day, they found the store completely empty. All the equipment was gone, the walls were blank, and there was no sign that anyone had ever worked there. The building was demolished a week later, and they built a small memorial park in its place. I still drive past that spot sometimes, on my way to my new job at a different pizza place, one that's busy and well lit in the middle of town. The memorial park is peaceful now, with flowers growing where the cursed store once stood. Sometimes when I pass by at night, I think I see familiar shapes walking among the flowers, but they're not scary anymore. They're free, just like me. I never thought my last shift at Domino's would turn into a nightmare. My name is Diana Miller, and I've been working at this downtown New York City location for the past 2 years to help pay for college. The store sits between tall buildings that make shadows stretch like long fingers across our windows at night. That night started like any other closing shift. The clock on the wall showed 11:45 p.m., and I was counting the money in the register while humming to myself. The dining area was empty, with chairs neatly tucked under tables. The only sounds were the quiet hum of the refrigerators and the occasional car passing by outside. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I arranged the dollar bills in neat stacks. Everything felt normal until the phone rang at exactly 12:07 a.m. I remember the time clearly because I had just checked my watch, thinking about catching the midnight train home. When I picked up the phone, the voice on the other end made my blood run cold. It wasn't angry or loud. That would have been less scary. Instead, it was calm and quiet, like someone telling a bedtime story. "Hello, Diana," the voice said. I hadn't told them my name. "Did you know that 60 years ago this building wasn't a Domino's? It was a butcher shop. The owner disappeared one night along with 5 customers. They were never found." I wanted to hang up, but something kept me listening. Maybe it was curiosity, or maybe it was fear. The voice continued. "History has a way of repeating itself, Diana. And tonight, you're part of that history." The line went dead, and suddenly, the empty dining area didn't feel so empty anymore. After the phone call, I tried to convince myself it was just a prank. Maybe one of my coworkers who knew I was leaving wanted to scare me. But deep down, I knew better. Nobody else knew I was working alone tonight. I had switched shifts with Mike at the last minute. I looked around the store, trying to focus on finishing my closing duties. The kitchen equipment cast strange shadows on the walls, and the metal surfaces reflected distorted versions of the room. Was that movement I saw in the corner just my imagination? I told myself. I pulled out my phone to call my manager, but there was no signal. That's weird. I always had perfect reception here. The store phone was dead too, even though it had worked just minutes ago for that terrible call. The sound of chairs scraping against the floor made me jump. I spun around, but all the chairs were still in place. Then I heard it. Soft whispers coming from the walk-in freezer. They sounded like multiple voices having a conversation, but I couldn't make out the words. "Hello?" I called out, my voice shaking. "Is anyone there?" The whispers stopped immediately. The silence that followed was worse than the whispers. I walked toward the freezer, telling myself I needed to check it before leaving. Each step felt heavier than the last. The handle was ice cold when I touched it, colder than usual. When I pulled the door open, the blast of cold air brought with it the smell of something that definitely wasn't pizza. Something old and unpleasant that made my stomach turn. The freezer looked normal at first glance. Boxes of ingredients stacked neatly on metal shelves. But something felt off. The back wall, which I'd seen hundreds of times before, seemed different somehow. I moved closer, pushing aside some boxes, and found something that shouldn't have been there. A door. It was old and made of wood, completely out of place in the modern freezer. The paint was peeling, revealing dark stains underneath. As I stared at it, I heard more whispers, this time coming from behind the door. My hands were shaking as I reached for the handle. I knew I should run, but curiosity pushed me forward. The handle turned with a creak, and the door swung open to reveal a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. The stairs looked ancient, nothing like the rest of the building. They were made of worn stone, and the walls were rough brick. A cold draft carried up the smell of wet earth and something else, something that reminded me of the meat department at the grocery store. I took out my phone to use as a flashlight. The light revealed something scratched into the wall, names and dates, dozens of them. The most recent was from last month. My heart nearly stopped when I saw it was signed Mike, the same Mike I had switched shifts with. The whispers grew louder, calling my name. They seemed to be coming from the bottom of the stairs. I knew I should leave, but somehow my feet started moving down those steps, one at a time. The staircase seemed to go down forever. The temperature dropped with each step, and my phone's light barely cut through the darkness. Water dripped somewhere in the distance, each drop echoing off the walls. When I finally reached the bottom, I found myself in a large room that looked like it belonged in the previous century. Old hooks hung from the ceiling, the kind used in butcher shops. Rusty tables lined the walls, their surfaces stained dark brown. My phone's light caught something moving in the corner. When I turned to look, I saw a figure standing there, but it wasn't quite right. It looked like a person, but its movements were jerky, unnatural. As it stepped into the light, I saw why. It was wearing an old butcher's apron, covered in stains, but where its head should have been, there was only darkness. More figures emerged from the shadows, all wearing similar aprons, all missing their heads. They moved toward me slowly, their footsteps making wet sounds on the floor. I backed away, but my back hit something solid. Another figure had appeared behind me. "Welcome to the real store," a voice whispered. The same voice from the phone. It seemed to come from all around me. "We've been waiting for someone to take the night shift permanently." The figures surrounded me but didn't attack. Instead, they parted to reveal an old book lying on one of the tables. It was a ledger, its pages yellow with age. As I approached, it fell open to reveal names and dates, the same names I had seen on the wall. "Every month we need someone new," the voice explained. "The butcher shop never really closed. It just changed its appearance. But we still need fresh meat." I recognized some of the recent names, all people who had mysteriously disappeared from the area over the years. Each one had worked a closing shift at this Domino's. The final entry was blank, waiting for a new name. My name. But something caught my eye, a pattern in the dates. They all happened on the 13th of the month, except for one. That entry was scratched out, and next to it was a note. The circle must be complete. I checked my phone's date. It was the 12th. They had made a mistake. They had called me one day too early. The realization gave me strength. If they had made one mistake, they could make others. I remembered something my grandmother used to say about evil spirits. They had to follow certain rules. Maybe these things, whatever they were, had rules too. I held up my phone, showing them the date. "You're early," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "The circle isn't ready yet." The figures froze. The voice spoke again, but this time it sounded uncertain. "Impossible. The time is right. The 13th hour." "Check the moon," I said, making it up as I went along. "It's not full yet. The circle can't be complete without the full moon." The shadows seemed to waver. I felt the rules of their reality bending around my words. They had to follow the pattern. They had no choice. I was creating new rules for their ritual, and they had to obey. "The sacrifice must wait," I continued, gaining confidence. "If you break the pattern, you'll lose your connection to this place forever." The figures began to retreat, their movements becoming less certain. The voice spoke one last time, fainter now. "Tomorrow night, then. You cannot escape your fate." But I was already backing toward the stairs. "The pattern is broken," I said. "You'll have to wait another month to try again." The shadows writhed in frustration, but they couldn't follow me. I had used their own rules against them. I ran up the stairs, taking them two at a time, not looking back. The wooden door slammed behind me as I burst out of the freezer. I didn't stop running until I was outside the store. The street had never looked so beautiful. Cars passing by, people walking home from late nights out, the normal world going about its business, unaware of what lay beneath the Dominoes. I quit my job the next day. I told them I was leaving for college early. My manager understood. Not many people lasted long on the closing shift anyway. Now I knew why. I've spent months researching the history of that building. The butcher shop was real. It closed in 1963 after the owner and 5 customers vanished. The Domino's opened 20 years later. Every month since then, someone working the closing shift has disappeared, except for the months when there was no full moon. I drive past the store sometimes. It looks normal during the day, just another pizza place in the city. But at night, when the shadows grow long, I can see dark figures moving behind the windows. They're still waiting, following their pattern, looking for someone to take the night shift. I know they're patient. They've waited this long. But they made one crucial mistake. They let me go. And now I know their rules. I've written them all down, every detail I can remember. Maybe this story will help the next person who gets a late-night phone call at the downtown Domino's. Just remember, always check the moon phase before taking the closing shift. I'm Linda Carter, and I never thought my regular night shift at Domino's would turn into the scariest night of my life. It was midnight in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and rain was hitting our windows so hard I could barely hear myself think. Lightning flashed outside, making shadows dance across our kitchen equipment. I was alone that night because my coworker Jake called in sick. Being the only person working at 21 Moonlight Drive wasn't unusual. We didn't get many customers after 10 p.m. in our small town. I kept myself busy making dough for tomorrow's pizzas while thunder boomed outside. The kitchen lights flickered a few times, making me jump. I told myself it was just the storm playing tricks with the power lines. But then I heard something that made my hands freeze mid-pizza toss. A whisper, soft but clear, coming from the direction of our big pizza oven. At first I thought someone had left a radio on. "Hello?" I called out, walking closer to the oven. "Is anyone there?" The whisper grew a bit louder, sounding like someone talking in their sleep. I couldn't make out the words, but something about that sound made my skin feel cold despite the heat from the ovens. I tried to shake it off and focus on my work. We still had 3 hours until closing time, and I had prep work to finish. But as I turned up the oven temperature to bake a fresh batch of breadsticks, the whispers got stronger, as if the heat was giving them power to speak. The whispers weren't going away. If anything, they were getting clearer. I stood in front of the oven, my heart beating fast as I tried to understand what I was hearing. It sounded like many voices talking at once, some angry, some sad, all of them desperate to be heard. "Linda?" I heard my name being called, and I jumped back. Nobody else was supposed to know I was working tonight. The voice came again. "Linda, help us." It was coming right from inside the oven, mixed with the sound of flames. I grabbed my phone to call my manager, but there was no signal. The storm must have knocked out the cell towers. The store phone wasn't working either, just static when I picked it up. I was completely alone with whatever was happening in our kitchen. The temperature display on the oven started changing by itself, numbers jumping up and down. 350, 425, 500 degrees. Higher and higher. I tried to turn it off, but the controls weren't responding. The metal was getting so hot I could feel the heat from several feet away. Then I saw something that made my blood run cold. Words started appearing in the flour dust on the prep counter. "We've been waiting for someone to listen." The letters formed slowly, one by one, as if an invisible finger was writing them. With shaking hands, I opened the store's computer and started searching through old files. The whispers had mentioned something about the fire, and I needed to know what they were talking about. After some digging, I found an old news article that made my stomach turn. 30 years ago, this building wasn't a Domino's. It was a small family restaurant. One night, a fire started in their kitchen and trapped 3 workers inside. They couldn't get out because the back door was locked from the outside. The article didn't say who locked it or why. More words appeared in the flower. They need to know the truth. The voices from the oven grew stronger, and I could feel them pulling me closer, wanting to show me something. The heat wasn't burning anymore. It felt more like a warm hand trying to guide me. I noticed the floor tiles near the oven were different from the rest of the kitchen. They looked newer, like they had been replaced. Using a spatula, I managed to pry one loose. Underneath was a small metal box, black with age and rust. Inside the box was an old key and a letter, the paper yellow and brittle. The letter was signed by someone named Thomas Wright, dated the day of the fire. As I started reading, the whispers got very quiet, like they were holding their breath. The letter shook in my hands as I read it. Thomas Wright had been the restaurant's owner, and his words painted a dark picture of what really happened that night. He wrote about money problems, insurance policies, and a plan that went horribly wrong. He had locked the back door himself, planning to start a small fire for the insurance money. He thought everyone had gone home, but 3 workers had stayed late to clean. When he realized people were trapped inside, he panicked and ran away instead of helping them. The whispers turned into crying sounds, and the temperature in the kitchen dropped so low I could see my breath. The spirits of those workers had been stuck here all this time, waiting for someone to find out the truth about what happened to them. Suddenly, all the lights in the store went out except for a strange blue glow coming from the oven. In that light, I saw 3 figures standing near the prep counter. They looked like normal people, but I could see right through them to the wall behind. One of them, a young woman, stepped forward and pointed to the letter in my hands. "Now you know," she said, her voice much clearer than the whispers. "But there's more to do. He's still out there, living free while we're trapped here." Using my phone's flashlight, I searched online for Thomas Wright. He was still alive, living just outside of town. The ghosts became very excited when they saw his address on my screen, making the lights flicker and the ovens rumble. "We need your help, Linda," the ghost woman said. Her name had been Sarah, she told me. The other 2 spirits were Mike and David. They had all been college students working part-time when the fire happened. They explained that they couldn't rest until Thomas admitted what he did. They had tried to communicate with other workers over the years, but no one had stayed long enough to understand. Something about this stormy night had made their connection stronger. I looked at the clock. It was only 1:30 a.m. I still had time before my shift ended at 3. The ghosts must have sensed my thoughts because Sarah shook her head. "It has to be tonight," she said. "The storm makes us strong enough to travel away from this place, but only until sunrise." Making a decision that I knew might be crazy, I grabbed my car keys. The spirits followed me like wisps of smoke, somehow squeezing into my car. As I drove through the rain, they told me more about their lives. The dreams they had before the fire took everything away. Thomas Wright's house was small and dark, with an overgrown yard. Despite the late hour, there was a light on inside. Sarah, Mike, and David floated beside me as I walked to the front door, their presence giving me courage I didn't know I had. When I knocked, an old man opened the door. He looked nothing like the young man from the old newspaper photo, but his eyes went wide with fear when he saw the spirits behind me. He tried to slam the door, but Sarah floated right through it, followed by Mike and David. I found myself following them inside, watching as Thomas Wright fell into a chair, his face pale. "I'm sorry," he whispered, over and over. "I never meant for anyone to get hurt. I've lived with this guilt every day." But the ghosts wanted more than just an apology. They led us to his phone, and with shaking hands he called the police. I listened as he confessed everything, 30 years of guilt pouring out of him. The spirits grew brighter with each word of truth he spoke. By the time the police arrived, Thomas Wright had written out a full confession. The ghosts stayed to watch him being taken away, their faces showing not anger now, but a kind of peace I hadn't seen before. As we drove back to Domino's, the spirits were quiet, but different. They looked less solid, more like morning mist than people. The storm was starting to calm down too, the thunder now just a distant rumble. Back in the kitchen, Sarah turned to me with a smile that seemed to light up the whole room. "Thank you, Linda," she said. "We've been holding on to our anger for so long, but now we can finally let go." Mike and David nodded, their forms growing fainter by the minute. "The truth is out now," David said. "That's all we wanted." Mike added, "Make sure they don't forget us." I promised I would remember them and tell their story. The first light of dawn was starting to show through the windows. As it touched them, the spirits began to fade away. Sarah was the last to go, reaching out as if to touch my hand. I felt a warm breeze pass through my fingers as she disappeared. The kitchen felt different now, peaceful and quiet. The oven was just an oven again. No whispers, no strange temperatures. I found myself crying, feeling both happy and sad at the same time. When my manager arrived at 6 a.m., I told him everything. He didn't believe me at first, but the police called the store later that day to confirm Thomas Wright's confession. The story was in all the local news by evening. The families of Sarah, Mike, and David finally got closure. A small memorial was put up in front of the store, with their pictures and the true story of what happened that night. Sometimes customers say they feel a warm, friendly presence when they visit, like someone watching over the place. I still work the night shift at Domino's, but it's different now. Every time I use the oven, I think about my 3 friends who found peace that stormy night. The kitchen never feels scary anymore, just warm and safe, like they're still watching out for us. Sometimes, on really stormy nights, I think I hear whispers again. But they're not sad or angry anymore. They sound like friends saying hello. And when the ovens work perfectly on busy nights, or when lost items mysteriously turn up just when we need them, I smile and whisper, "Thank you." The truth set them free, and it changed me too. I learned that some mysteries want to be solved, and some stories need to be told. And sometimes, on the midnight shift, when you least expect it, you might find yourself helping someone find their way home, even if home isn't quite what you thought it would be. I never thought my job at Domino's would turn into something from a nightmare. My name is Isabella Reyes, and I'm just a regular pizza maker in Miami. At least that's what I was, until that sticky afternoon in July when everything changed. I was working the afternoon shift at our store on Ocean Drive, right in the heart of Miami. The air conditioning was fighting a losing battle against the Florida heat, and the smell of fresh pizza dough filled the kitchen. It was supposed to be just another day of making pizzas, taking orders, and dealing with the usual rush of hungry customers. That morning, our manager had announced we were getting a new pizza variant on the menu. "It's going to be special," he had said, showing us a strange-looking red sauce that came in black containers. I remember thinking the sauce looked different, thicker than our usual marinara, with tiny specks that seemed to shimmer under the kitchen lights. The first few hours were normal. Tourists came in seeking refuge from the heat, locals called in their usual orders, and delivery drivers zoomed in and out. But around 4 p.m., things started getting weird. A customer who had ordered our new pizza came back, his face pale and sweaty. He wasn't angry, which was unusual for a returning customer. Instead, he looked scared. "The pizza," he whispered, leaning over the counter toward me. When I ate it, I saw things that couldn't be real. Before I could ask what he meant, another customer walked in with the same haunted look. By 4:30 p.m., our phone was ringing nonstop. Each caller had the same story. After eating our new pizza, they started seeing things. Mrs. Rodriguez, who lived 3 blocks away, said her walls started moving. The teenage boys who always came after school said their sodas turned into swimming pools of tiny fish. I started keeping notes on my phone. Everyone who had these visions had ordered the new pizza. The common factor was clear. It had to be that strange new sauce. During a quiet moment, I snuck into the storage room to look at the sauce containers more closely. The labels were plain black and white, with no company logo, just a batch number and a date. That's when I noticed something odd. The delivery receipt was missing. All our ingredients always came with proper paperwork, but not this one. I pulled out my phone and tried to search for information about our suppliers, but nothing came up about any new sauce partnerships. My hands shook as I replaced the container on the shelf. When I turned around, I almost screamed. My manager was standing in the doorway. "Everything okay, Isabella?" he asked, but something about his smile seemed forced. I nodded quickly and hurried back to the front, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he knew exactly what I was doing. The evening rush was starting, but it wasn't like our usual dinner crowd. People were walking in just to stare at our menu board, whispering to each other. Some pointed at the new pizza description, then hurried out without ordering. Marco, our delivery driver, came back from a run looking shaken. "The lady at apartment 507, he said, his voice trembling. She was crying when she opened the door. Said her pizza was talking to her, actually talking. I wanted to stop serving the new pizza, but when I suggested it to my manager, he just shook his head. "Corporate orders," he said firmly. "We keep selling until told otherwise." During my break, I went outside to get some fresh air. That's when I saw the black van. It was parked across the street, no windows, no markings. As I watched, a man in a dark suit stepped out, holding what looked like a tablet. He stood there for a moment, looking directly at our store, then spoke into a phone. When I got back inside, there was a new note posted in the kitchen. "All staff must use the new sauce as directed. No substitutions allowed." The handwriting wasn't my manager's. I couldn't sleep that night. The images of scared customers kept playing in my mind. The next morning I came in early, determined to find answers. I waited until my manager went to the bank, then used his computer to check our email. There it was, an email thread about the new sauce. The supplier's name was Culinary Innovations Limited, but when I searched online, the company didn't exist. The only contact was a phone number with no area code. While I was reading, Sarah from the morning shift came running in. "Isabella, you need to see this." She showed me her phone. People were posting about our pizza all over social media. Videos showed customers having the same hallucinations. Some saw butterflies made of fire, others heard music coming from their walls. I copied down the supplier information and was about to close the email when a new message popped up. "Phase 1 successful. Proceed with Phase 2 tomorrow." My hands turned cold. What was Phase 2? That afternoon, an old woman came into the store. She wasn't like our other customers. She walked straight up to me, ignoring the line. "You're the one asking questions," she said. It wasn't a question. She slipped me a piece of paper. "I used to work for them," she whispered. "The sauce isn't just sauce. They're testing something that isn't ready for people yet. You need to stop it." Before I could ask more, she was gone. The paper had an address and a time. Warehouse 17, Port of Miami, midnight. My shift ended at 11:30 p.m. I could make it there, but did I dare? As I was thinking about it, 3 men in dark suits walked in. They didn't order anything, just stood near the counter watching. My manager saw them and rushed over, leading them to his office. Through the window, I could see them showing him something on a tablet. He kept nodding, looking more worried with each minute. I knew going to the warehouse was dangerous, but I had to know the truth. After my shift, I took a taxi to the port. Warehouse 17 was at the far end, away from the lights. As I got closer, I heard voices. Through a dirty window, I saw people in white lab coats moving around large metal tanks. They were mixing something, pouring it into familiar-looking black containers. On a wall, a screen showed brain scan images and charts I didn't understand. Suddenly, my phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Get out now. They know you're there." I turned to run, but lights started flashing. Alarms blared. I heard shouts and footsteps. I ran between containers and trucks, my heart pounding. Behind me, flashlight beams cut through the darkness. I didn't stop running until I reached the main road, where I jumped into the first taxi I saw. The next morning, our store was closed. A sign said renovations. But when I peeked through the windows, people in hazmat suits were removing all our sauce containers. My phone was full of missed calls from my manager. I went to the local newspaper with my story and the pictures I'd taken at the warehouse. They ran a story that afternoon. Experimental food testing program exposed. Within hours, it was all over the news. The truth came out in pieces. Culinary Innovations Limited was a front for a research company. They were testing a new food additive that was supposed to enhance the eating experience through mild hallucinations. But something had gone wrong. The effects were stronger than planned, and they had used our customers as test subjects without anyone knowing. The FDA shut down their operation. The men in suits disappeared. My manager admitted he had been paid to participate, but didn't know the full extent of what was happening. It's been 3 months since that day. Our store reopened with new management and a promise of complete transparency about ingredients. The story made national news, and new laws were passed about food testing. Sometimes customers still ask about the magic pizza, but most people want to forget it ever happened. The old woman who warned me never came back, and the warehouse at the port stands empty. I still work at Domino's, but things are different now. Every delivery receipt is checked twice. Every ingredient is tested before use. And if a customer says their pizza is talking to them, we know it's just because it tastes that good. But sometimes, late at night when I'm closing up, I think I see black vans driving slowly past our store. And sometimes, when I'm making pizza, I catch myself checking the sauce extra carefully, just to be sure it's really just tomatoes and herbs. Because now I know that in the world of fast food, some secrets are better left untasted.